glimpse into a society in decay, where morality and justice were often put to the test. This is the story of a Levite, his concubine, and the devastating consequences of his choices. Imagine yourself on a silent night, where the moonlight illuminates the deserted streets of a forgotten city. The echo of footsteps approaches, and a cutting cry breaks the tranquility. What could have led to such despair? Get ready for a journey of betrayal, sacrifice, and the search for redemption, as we explore Judges chapter 19. The Levite, a man of faith, but lost in his own weaknesses. The concubine, a woman who seeks accessible love, but who finds herself trapped in a troubled relationship. The city of Gibeah, a place that represents corruption and moral decay. The Levite and his concubine move away from each other, and she returns to her father's house. The Levite decides to go get her, facing challenges and uncertainties on his journey. Upon entering the city of Gibeah, the Levite felt a mixture of collapse and apprehension. The hospitality of the man who welcomed them, named Ephraim, brought a little comfort. Ephraim was a good man, known for his security and generosity. He offered shelter and food, and the atmosphere looked promising, though a shadow hung over the city. As the night wore on, the Levite and her concubine sat at the table, sharing stories and laughter. However, the peace was interrupted when a group of men from the city began to gather outside. The sound of laughter and chatter turned into menacing murmurs. The Levite, noticing the tension, feeling a chill down his spine. The men of Gibeah, moved by dark desires, surrounded the house of Ephraim. They wanted the Levite to be delivered to them, calling for his presence in a violent manner. Ephraim, in an act of desperation, tried to protect his guests, but the situation deteriorated rapidly. The Levite, in a moment of weakness and despair, made a tragic decision. To save his own skin, he offered his concubine to the men. Horror gripped the room when she was forced out of the safety of the house. Her scream echoed through the night, a sound the Levite would never forget. The night dragged on, and what happened outside the house was a nightmare that the concubine did not deserve. When morning finally came, the Levite found his concubine lying at the door, lifeless. Despair and guilt flooded his heart. He had lost not only the love of his life, but also his very humanity. With tears in his eyes, the Levite made a decision. He could not let injustice go unpunished. He cut the body of the concubine into 12 parts and sent each part to the tribes of Israel, summoning them to unite against Gibeah. The cry for ecological justice or for the entire nation. The tribes of Israel gathered, horrified by the tragedy that had occurred. And the Levite, now a man consumed by grief and the need for revenge, spoke fervently about the need for justice. He described the brutality his beloved had endured and asked everyone to unite to punish the men of Gibeah. Indignation took hold of the people, and an alliance was formed. The tribes marched together toward Gibeah, determined to do justice. The battle that struck was fierce and bloody. The men of Gibeah, besieged and hopeless, fought bravely, but the wrath of the tribes of Israel was relentless. After the battle, Gibeah was reduced to rubble. The victory, however, did not bring a problem to Levita. He had sought justice, but the burning of pain and guilt still consumed him. He saw that his choices not only destroyed his concubine's life, but also led to the deaths of many innocents. In the midst of grief and destruction, the Levite reflected on the consequences of his actions. He had sacrificed the love of his life for a moment of weakness, and now the entire nation was paying the price. The echo of his decision resonated in his heart, reminding him that sin has consequences that go beyond what we can imagine. The story of the Levite and his concubine is a grim reminder of the choices they make and the repercussions they can have. Sin does not only affect the individual, but it can spread and cause pain to many. The search for justice, although necessary, cannot erase the pain of loss. The years passed, and the memory of the tragedy of Gibeah became a lesson for future generations. The city, once a symbol of corruption and decay, was dwarfed to a heap of ruins, a constant reminder of the consequences of sin. The Levite, now a safer and sadder man, peacefully throughout the land of Israel, sharing the story of his loss and the price he paid for his choices. He became a prophet, announcing to the people about the dangers of immorality and lack of justice. The tribes of Israel, remembering Gibeah's lesson, began to strive to live according to God's commandments. They rebuilt their cities, restored their families, and sought justice in their communities. Years later, a new generation grew up in Israel. They heard the stories of their parents and grandparents about the tragedy of Gibeah and the importance of living with integrity. They learned to respect God's law and to seek justice in all their actions. Among this new generation was a young man named Samuel. He was a boy of faith, who grew up listening to the stories of the Levite and learning from his lessons. Samuel became a leader in Israel, known for his wisdom and justice. One day, God called Samuel to be a prophet and leader in Israel. Samuel, humble and obedient, responded to God's call. He became a great leader, who guided the people of Israel with wisdom and justice. Samuel was always reminded of the story of Gibeah and the importance of living with integrity. He announced to the people about the dangers of sin and encouraged them to seek righteousness in all their actions. The story of Gibeah became a lesson for future generations. It reminds us of the consequences of sin and the importance of living with integrity. It shows us that the choices we make can have repercussions that go beyond what we can imagine. Gibeah's lesson is clear. Sin can lead to destruction, but righteousness and integrity can lead to life and prosperity. It is a lesson we must always remember, in our personal lives and in our communities. Gibeah's story is a grim reminder of the consequences of sin, but it is also a message of hope. It shows us that even in the midst of destruction and grief, we can find redemption and restoration. The lesson of Gibeah is a lesson for all generations. It reminds us of the importance of living with integrity and seeking justice in all our actions. It is a lesson we must always remember, in our personal lives and in our communities.